Kirsten, we are going to do our saturation experiment today, and I'm going to be using Cerulean Blue. I'm going to upload this video unedited, so hopefully we get through this fairly easily. You can use any blue you want. I'm going to put mine down kind of in a longer line because I want to use the widest brush I have. If you only have a 1 inch, that's okay. I'm using a 2-inch brush. You want to get your brush a little wet. You don't need it crazy wet, but just a little. And then I'm going to load up both sides of my brush. So you're just dipping the ends of the bristles in and kind of pulling it out. Dipping and pulling. So once we've got both sides of it loaded, we're just going to start. This is just an experiment, so we're not looking for anything in particular. I'm going to start by adding a stroke. Now you can see that's already looking like not a lot of paint. Well, you're going to dip your brush back in the water, and you're just going to start moving this same one load of the brush around. You don't have to do it all in the same stroke that you started with. You can change your strokes. And you can tell this is a pretty coarse brush that I'm working with because you can see all the bristle lines. When it starts to feel a little dry, dip back in and come back on. Brush it across. So what you're going to see as I keep working with this is that there's going to be areas that are darker and areas that are lighter. You're using very little paint, and you're going to get these different saturation hues, or saturation levels I should say, just based on the water and the amount of pigment that you're moving around the canvas. This is an 11 by 14 canvas. You are perfectly fine to work on something smaller. I'm going to start by trying to get the whole canvas covered, as well as part of my table, obviously. So again, not worrying about brush strokes, just looking at how do I change the saturation. So I'm going to get a little bit more paint on my brush, and I'm just going to keep working it. So this way, when this dries, it will not have a solid look, which is what we want to avoid. Sometimes a solid look is good, but for the most part, it lacks visual interest. There are statements that you can make with your art with very solid looking pieces or slabs of color, however you want to think of it. I switched my canvas around because it's easier for me to move the canvas and do the same stroke, and it will be in a different direction rather than trying to continue to work in the same direction. So if I have an area that I'm now looking at and going, oh, this is too similar in tone, you're just going to dip your brush in the water and then add that water. And it will allow you to kind of move that pigment around a little bit. Now, it will start to dry, and you won't be able to, because it's acrylic. If this was oil, it would be very different. But with this being acrylic, you can't experiment quite as much. You can't do quite as much as you can with oil. So I'm going to really, splash water everywhere. Clean my brush out. Not completely, but I'm going to try to get some of that pigment out, and then come back over here and add a lighter spot. There is something I've forgotten. Just 1 second. A really handy tool that you always should have available to you is paper towel. One, to clean up messes you make. I've made quite a few of those this morning. And you can also, if you have paper towel handy, you can take this brush and then take that pigment right off and wipe it off. Hopefully you can see that. And this is going to give you more of that change in saturation, right? Which is what we're looking for. Some lighter spots, some darker spots, and then you can kind of go in and blend those. Now, if you're looking for a more refined look, you need to use a nicer brush than what I'm currently using. Another thing you can do is just go on, add some water, take your paper towel and dab it off. Well, that took off more than I expected. So you can kind of add texture, and if that's like I said, oh man, that's too much, then we'll just go back through with the water. So hopefully this helps you to get different saturations in your backgrounds, even if you only have one color. Of course, another really easy thing to do is to add another color, a darker shade of blue or a lighter shade of blue. So hopefully that helps. You can really get crazy with this and really kind of experiment a lot depending on the quality of your acrylic paint. So you can only stretch the pigment so far depending on the quality you have. So fiddle with that some, experiment with it, see how the paper towel works for you, see how the adding water works for you. You can do all sorts of things with this technique. And now I'm going to take my brush. I'm actually going to get a fresh piece of paper towel here. I really want to dry it off well. And again, this would be better with a better brush, but even without a better brush, you can see you can add quite a bit to your background just by moving that paint around.